My wife's company president's son looked down on her, not knowing I was from a major business partner. He told her, "There's no work for someone as incompetent as you. So go home." That's when I immediately called her company and said, "I'm canceling the contract. And I'm shutting your company down." On my wife Molly's employee ID, the words "incompetent middle school graduate" were written in bold letters. My hands, holding the ID, trembled uncontrollably. My head was filled with rage. I knew that Troy, the department head, had always looked down on Molly because her highest level of education was middle school. But I never imagined an adult would stoop to something this childish. "Who made this?" I muttered, half in disbelief. "Of course, it was Troy," Molly answered. And then, I made a call. The person didn't answer, so I kept calling again and again. Before I realized it, I had called at least 10 times. Finally, on the 11th attempt, they picked up. "Isaac, it's me. I was in a business meeting and couldn't answer, but when I saw 10 missed calls from you, I have to admit I was a little scared. Normally, you wait before calling back, right? Oh, this is what they call blowing up my phone, isn't it? I may be old, but I know some slang." The person on the other end burst into laughter, but I had no intention of laughing along. Instead, I spoke, my voice laced with anger. "Mr. Sawyer, the $634 million contract is off. I'm shutting your company down." "What?" the voice on the other end shouted in shock. Wait, hold on. What's this all about?" And so, my counterattack began. "My name is Isaac Tucker. I'm 30 years old. I've been married for 5 years and live with my wife, who's the same age as me. Her name is Molly, and we got married when we were both 25. We don't have kids, and since we both work, we have a system. On weekdays, Molly, who gets home earlier, cooks dinner, and on weekends and holidays, I take care of the meals. I first met Molly when I was 19, working part-time at a coffee chain. She had been working full-time since she was 16, meaning she had 3 more years of work experience than me despite being the same age. To my inexperienced self, she seemed dazzling. She was confident, quick, and efficient, handling customers with ease, preparing orders, and giving clear directions to the staff. To anyone watching, she was a top-tier employee. That's why, at first, I was convinced she was older than me. But one day, after our shift ended, we happened to leave work together, and she casually said, "I'm actually the same age as you, Isaac." I was so shocked I blurted out, "No way. You're kidding, right?" She misunderstood and pouted. "What, do I look that old to you?" The hurt look on her face stuck with me. Of course, I quickly reassured her that wasn't what I meant. Looking back, I never imagined that our awkward first interaction would lead to marriage years later. Anyway, to me, Molly always seemed like a dependable, older sister-type figure. I quit that part-time job after about 2 years, but Molly, being a full-time employee, stayed on longer. When we started talking seriously about marriage, Molly hesitated. "My job requires working weekends, which means our days off won't match. Maybe I should look for something else." I told her, "Don't worry about me. You should do whatever makes you happy." But a few months before our wedding, she decided to change jobs and became an office worker at a manufacturing company. "Do you regret leaving the coffee shop?" I asked. "Not really. Thinking long-term, I figured an office job would be better. Plus, Mr. Sawyer told me during the interview that if I work hard and get promoted, my salary will go up. And honestly, I'm just happy I get weekends off now," she said. I felt a little guilty, knowing she made this decision partly for our marriage, but I was relieved she found a new job. And I was ready to support her all the way. For a while, she seemed to be doing fine. But one day my department head, Troy, is such a jerk. He keeps bringing up my education, saying things like, "You're just a low education worker." She came home looking exhausted. I knew that even though Molly hadn't gone to high school, she was incredibly capable once she learned something. "Don't let it get to you. What matters isn't your education, it's whether you can actually do the job," I reassured her. Luckily, Molly was naturally cheerful. "Thanks. Yeah, you're right. If I work hard and prove myself, they'll have to recognize me," she said, raising her fists in determination. I admired her positivity and dedication all over again. For a while, she didn't complain about work, but then, she came to me again. "Isaac, do you think I'm useless?" she asked, looking sad. So I was shocked. "Of course not. Who told you that?" "It was Troy," she admitted. I thought to myself, Troy again, feeling a surge of frustration. I despised him for speaking so poorly about my wife. But since I had never met the man myself, I decided to focus on the most important thing: lifting Molly's spirits right in front of me. "I know just how capable you are, Molly. It must be tough working under a department head like that. But there are people who will recognize your worth. Just keep believing in yourself and doing your job with confidence." I told her that. Molly clenched her fists and smiled. You're right. I always feel bad that you have to cheer me up, but thank you. I won't let it get to me. I'll do my best. Seeing her smile reassured me, but at the same time, my distrust toward Troy only grew stronger. As time passed, I noticed Molly looking increasingly exhausted. She used to be the one suggesting, "Hey, there's somewhere I want to go. Want to come with me?" And we'd often go sightseeing or shopping together. But lately, she had been shutting herself in her room, sighing heavily, or not even getting out of bed. Concerned, I suggested, "How about we go eat something delicious?" But she just murmured, "Yeah, but I don't feel like going out today." Eventually, spending weekends alone became my new routine. I told myself that everyone has times like this, that we didn't have to go out all the time. But seeing how her smiles had dwindled, I couldn't help but worry. I kept inviting her out every weekend until finally, she said, "Well, if you insist, maybe I should go out today." So we went shopping downtown. We browsed accessories and clothes in a boutique when suddenly, Molly's face darkened. "Isaac, let's get out of here." I followed her out of the store, but the moment we stepped outside, a man called out from behind us, "Well, if it isn't Molly, a middle school graduate shopping for new clothes? You should just stick to wearing secondhand junk for life." The words were sharp and cruel. Molly didn't say a word. She just stood there, her expression tense. I immediately had a hunch. I turned to the man and asked, "Are you by any chance from Molly's company?" "Nice to meet you. I'm her husband, Isaac. Thank you for looking after my wife." The man scoffed, barely acknowledging me. Then he turned back to Molly and sneered, "Damn, you sure bagged yourself a fine husband for a middle school graduate." His rude attitude, insulting right in front of me, made me so angry that I wanted to grab him by the collar. But I held back and forced a bright, fake smile as I deliberately responded with words I didn't mean, saying, "Oh, I'm flattered. I wouldn't say I'm impressive at all. In fact, I'm glad that Molly has a boss like you." Then lowering my voice so he couldn't hear, I added, "A truly remarkable boss who can't even manage a proper greeting." The man frowned in confusion and glared at me. "Let's go, Isaac. Excuse us." With that, Molly took my hand and led me out of the store. It was then that I realized the rude man from earlier was none other than Troy, Molly's workplace nemesis. He really did have an awful attitude, and I could only imagine how stressful it must be to work with him every day. Thinking about it, I said, "Hey, Molly, if you're not happy at your job, you don't have to stay. I can support us, so you can quit if you want." She smiled and replied, "Thank you, but I don't want to give in so easily. I'll keep trying." Hearing that, I couldn't help but worry if she was pushing herself too hard. "Does Troy always talk to you like that?" I asked, genuinely concerned. She sighed and said, "He's always bringing up my education, constantly reminding me that I only have a middle school diploma, like it makes me beneath him. But honestly, people assume that if someone didn't finish high school, it must be because they were neglected or just lazy. I get it. And in the end, it's my own fault that I didn't go to high school." She said it with a hint of sadness in her voice. I immediately spoke up, trying to reassure her. "Molly, that's not true at all. The reason you didn't go to high school, or rather, couldn't, wasn't your fault. At an age when you should have been focusing on just studying in your own future, you were helping your family. And because of that, you stepped into the workforce earlier than most people. That's something to be proud of. You've always worked so hard. I respect you so much." I knew that Molly hadn't gone to high school because her parents divorced when she was in middle school, and she grew up in a single-mother household. Her mother wasn't in good health, and financially, things were tough. But it wasn't like her mother had asked her. Molly had made that decision on her own, choosing to enter the workforce early to help. And the fact that she had risen to a managerial position at such a young age was something I had always admired about her. Hearing my words, Molly suddenly burst into tears. "I'm sorry. It's just that I can't seem to prove myself at work. I chose to work instead of going to high school because of my family situation. But because of that, I've only caused embarrassment for you and my family. Having someone like me in the family must be humiliating, right? I'm really sorry." She sobbed uncontrollably, tears streaming down her face. I panicked, trying to comfort her. "Humiliating? No way. Molly, you're my greatest source of pride." She wiped her tears, took a deep breath, and whispered, "I'm sorry. Thank you." Then, she looked up at me with newfound determination and said, "I'll keep doing my best." But the more she pushed herself, the more I worried that she was just wearing herself down. There were plenty of other workplaces out there, and given how capable she was, I was sure she could find another job easily. But no matter how many times I encouraged her to change jobs, she always said, "No company would hire someone like me, a middle school graduate. I just have to work hard and prove myself here." And so, she endured. Months passed. Then, one day, something great happened. Molly came home with an unusually bright expression. Noticing this right away, I asked, "Something good happened today, didn't it?" With a smile, she said, "That obnoxious Troy got transferred. And the new department head, Kai, is a really nice guy. The whole atmosphere at work has improved, and for the first time in a long time, I actually enjoyed my day at work." Hearing that, I felt relieved and genuinely happy for her. That's amazing. It really makes a difference by who you work with. "I'm so glad Kai is a good person." I said that. "Thank you," Molly replied. From what she told me, that rude man we ran into while shopping, the one who always looked down on her, was Troy, a man in his 40s and the son of the company president. The president, Casey Sawyer, was a self-made entrepreneur who built the company from the ground up. Now at 70 years old, he was apparently considering stepping down and passing the role to his son. Troy had been transferred to the New York headquarters, and rumors among employees suggested that the leadership transition was imminent. "I see. I'm glad that obnoxious Troy got transferred, but if he's the next president, that doesn't sound good at all." When I commented, Molly quickly agreed. "Right? If Troy becomes president, it's going to be a nightmare. He's obsessed with academic credentials, so he'll always look down on me. I might as well give up on promotions and raises." When I was hired, Mr. Sawyer told me he values ability over education, which is why I joined in the first place. "That's a problem. We need to find a way to keep him from taking over." I muttered without thinking, but Molly, instead of dwelling on it, brightened up. "Well, honestly, because of Troy, I was never given proper work anyway. Now that he's gone, I can finally take on real tasks and prove myself. Kai already recognizes my abilities, so I just need to keep pushing forward." Seeing her so determined reassured me, and I wanted to support her. Then, 6 months later, Molly came home with big news. "Isaac, guess what? I got a promotion." Both Kai and Mr. Sawyer recognized my work, and starting next month, I'll be promoted to section chief. Seeing my wife so excited, I felt genuinely happy for her. But that happiness didn't last long. She continued, and what she said next shocked me. "And, I'll be transferring to the headquarters next month." What? It was supposed to be good news, but my immediate reaction was confusion. Molly had a mixed expression, happy, yet troubled. She had been working at a branch office outside the main city, but now she'd be moving to the company's prestigious headquarters in New York, surrounded by skyscrapers. It was definitely a step up. "But that means, you'll be working where Troy is, right?" I voiced my biggest concern. Molly gave me a small nod. "Well, but it's the headquarters. There are tons of employees. You probably won't have to deal with him much, right?" I said, almost trying to convince myself. But she shook her head. "Troy is a department head there. And I'll be a section chief in his department. So, I'll be working directly under him." She sounded disappointed as she said it. "No way. Isn't there any way around this?" "I really don't think you should have to work with him again," I said, panicking. I had seen how miserable she was because of Troy before, and I couldn't stand the thought of her going through that again. "I know, but now that both Kai and Mr. Sawyer have recognized my abilities, I doubt Troy will be able to treat me like before," she said, her eyes filled with determination. She was right. That was how things should be, and she had grown both in her skills and her confidence. "Yeah. You should show Troy just how capable you are. He won't have anything to say after that," I said, genuinely believing in her. But I never could have imagined what would happen just 2 weeks later, on the morning of Molly's first day at headquarters. She was dressed sharply in a gray suit, looking more polished than usual. Before leaving, she smiled at me and said, "From today, I'll be heading out before you. Sorry, I won't be able to make your coffee anymore. Good luck, Molly." I thought to myself as I watched her leave. I didn't care about promotions or raises, I just wanted her to be able to thrive in a place where she could prove her worth. I spent the day worrying about her but went to work as usual. That evening, when I returned home, Molly was already there. "I'm home, Molly. You got back before me. How was your first day?" I asked while setting down my bag and taking off my jacket. I hadn't looked at her properly yet. There was no response. Maybe she didn't hear me. I stepped closer, about to ask again. Then, I looked at her face and froze in shock. She was crying. "What? What happened? Molly, what's wrong?" I panicked. She was crying silently, holding back her sobs. Somehow, it was even more painful to see than if she had been wailing out loud. It was the kind of sadness and frustration that cut deep. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Why are you apologizing?" I asked, confused. She shook her head and said, "I really am incompetent. I never should have been promoted." Then she started crying again. A bad feeling crept over me. "Did Troy say something to you?" I asked, and Molly's quiet sobs grew a little louder. That was all the confirmation I needed. Just when she had finally been able to shine at work, just when she had been recognized for her abilities and promoted, Troy was back to ruin it all. It felt like we were right back where we started. Honestly, I was beginning to think she should give up on the promotion and request a transfer back to her old branch. Anything to get away from Troy. Molly, is there any way you can transfer back to your old branch? I asked. She shook her head. No. It's impossible to reverse a personnel transfer like that. And besides, I worked so hard to become a section chief. She answered through her tears. I understand that, but people like him don't just change overnight. I'm more worried about you getting drained by all of this, I told her. At the same time, I hated the idea of her career being derailed by such a pathetic excuse for a boss. Then, Molly finally started talking. Actually, today, I was sent home an hour after I arrived. Troy told me, there's no work for an incompetent person like you, so just go home. Some of the other employees tried to stop him, but he stood there watching me the whole time until I left. Why does he hate me this much? And the worst part is this. She reached into her bag, grabbed a strap that was sticking out, and pulled something up. It looked like an employee ID badge. Normally, an ID like that would have a photo, name, department, and job title. But something caught my eye. There was a large bold word printed across it. Caution. What the hell is this? I leaned in and took a closer look. Below Molly's name, written in bold, unmistakable letters, were the words, "Incompetent middle school graduate." My hands trembled as I held the badge. My head filled with rage. I couldn't believe that a workplace full of adults professionals could stoop to something this childish and disgusting. Who made this? Before I could even finish asking, Molly said, "Of course it was Troy." Of course it was. There was no one else in that office petty and cruel enough to pull something like this. Molly had earned her promotion fair and square. But Troy didn't even care to acknowledge her skills. He was still hung up on her education. Still using it to humiliate her. This wasn't just bullying. It was beyond pathetic. This is blatant workplace harassment. There's no way he's getting away with this, I said, and Molly nodded weakly. Yeah. But since he's Mr. Sawyer's son, no one dares to stand up to him. I understand the logic behind it. Society is like that. There are many unreasonable things that cannot be defied by blood or power. I bit my lip. Then a switch flipped in my head. If that's how it is, then I won't hold back. I don't care what you say, Molly. Troy crossed the line, and I'm going to make sure he pays for it. Molly looked at me, wide-eyed in surprise. The next moment, I pulled out my phone, scrolled through my contacts, and made a call. The phone rang and rang. No answer. I hung up and immediately called again. I kept calling over and over. By the time I realized it, I had already called 10 times. Finally, on the 11th call, the person on the other end picked up. Isaac? It's me. I was in the middle of a business meeting and couldn't answer. But when I saw 10 missed calls from you, I'll be honest, I was terrified. Normally, people wait a while before calling again. Ah, this is what they call blowing up my phone, isn't it? I may be old, but I still know some modern slang. The voice on the other end laughed heartily, completely unaware of my seething rage. I, on the other hand, was furious. Mr. Sawyer, the $634 million contract is off. Your company is finished. What? Wait a minute. What are you talking about? What's going on? He was clearly flustered, but I didn't stop. This isn't sudden. I've been holding back for a long time, but I've had enough. You allowed your son to insult and humiliate my wife. Sure, it was your son who did it, not you. But that doesn't mean you can wash your hands of this. The fact that you let someone like him run free makes you responsible. You made the mistake of pissing me off, so your company is going to take a $634 million hit. And let's be honest, it won't survive. This is the end for you. I let it all out, and I felt damn good about it. The person on the phone was none other than Mr. Sawyer, the president of the company where my wife, Molly, worked. And as for how I knew him, well, that was simple. I owned my own company, and not just any company, one of the largest business partners of Mr. Sawyer's firm. Recently, my company had started using parts manufactured by his company in our production line. It was a new business relationship, one that I had carefully orchestrated for this very moment. Ever since his disgrace of a son, Troy, started harassing my wife, I had been planning this exact scenario. My company started out small but worked hard to scale up. My company was small at the beginning, but I grew it steadily. And through direct negotiations with Mr. Sawyer, I intentionally made his company dependent on me by doing large-scale transactions. Mr. Sawyer also jumped on this large deal and became heavily dependent on the revenue from my company. And it seems that he also proceeded to invest in many new machines. Wait, your wife? Are you telling me, that woman with the same last name as you in my company, she's your wife? Mr. Sawyer yelled in shock. That's exactly right. I figured you might have noticed. But let me ask, if you had known, would you have stopped your son from humiliating her? Because I don't think this is about who she is at all. I think it's about basic human decency. And as expected, Mr. Sawyer had no idea what had happened today. Your son, Troy, gave my wife an ID badge that said incompetent middle school graduate on it. Then, within an hour of her first day at headquarters, he ordered her to go home, saying there was no work for someone as useless as her. That's a clear compliance violation. When I explained this, Mr. Sawyer said over the phone, "Oh my. No way. No way," and moaned repeatedly. "I deeply apologize. My son's behavior is completely unacceptable. Please, forgive me. Just please don't cancel the contract. We've already increased expenditures expecting the revenue from this deal. If you pull out now, my company will collapse." Mr. Sawyer was desperate. But frankly, I didn't give a damn. Troy had humiliated her, degraded her, and reduced her to tears. That was unforgivable. And letting it happen. Raising someone like that and planning to hand over a company to him made Mr. Sawyer just as guilty in my eyes. "I'll do anything. Anything. Just please don't destroy us. I beg you, Isaac. Please." Mr. Sawyer was pleading now, practically groveling. Then, Molly, who had been silent until then, interrupted, wondering if the caller had heard her voice. "Isaac, I want you to let that much go. Mr. Sawyer is not a bad person. It's Troy who is bad. God, my wife was too kind. I fell in love with her all over again in that moment. But I wasn't ready to let this go. I get it, Molly. But as a president myself, let me say this. A leader is responsible for everything their subordinates do. Maybe Mr. Sawyer is a good man, but that doesn't change the fact that this happened under his watch. That's just how it works." When I explained this to Molly, she fell silent as if thinking a bit. Then she said, "Isaac, thank you. If it weren't for Isaac's action, I would have been ruined by Troy's harassment. May I make a proposal to Mr. Sawyer?" she said in a strong tone. I couldn't refuse her when she said that, so I handed her the phone I was using while on a call with Mr. Sawyer. "Mr. Sawyer, this is Molly speaking. I apologize for involving my husband in this, but I had no other choice. The truth is your employees, including myself, feel powerless against your son. Because he is your heir, no one dares to